call the first person to testify here before the committee.
First wishing to speak is Amanda Fisher with NFIB and opposed to both bills.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, members of the committee and Mr. Chairman. My name.
Excuse me, Amanda.
Yes.
Do you have any written testimony?
I do. I'll give it to you guys after. I just didn't want to ruin anything.
Oh, okay. All right. Go ahead. Go ahead, Amanda.
My name is Amanda Fisher, and I'm the Assistant State Director for NFIB here in Michigan. NFIB is a member-driven organization for America's small and independent business owners in Washington, D.C. and all 50 states, and we are celebrating our 75th birthday this year. On behalf of my members in Michigan, I'm here today to oppose Senate Bills 632 and 633. Cybersecurity is undoubtedly an important issue and will continue to be so in order to keep pace with technology, as well as the sophistication and creativity of thieves who hack information. And while we appreciate your good intentions, Senator Boer, and the concerns of our friends at the Bankers Association and Credit Union League, these bills are simply flawed legislation. Excuse me. Let's start with Senate Bill 633. Unfortunately, it does nothing to prevent these thieves, because that's what they are, thieves, from stealing information. What it does do is put onerous regulations on the victims of information theft, who are not just individuals, but businesses as well. This bill would specifically compel businesses to notify financial institutions within 3 days of being aware of a breach or face a cause of action by the financial institutions themselves. And to your point on Chili's, Senator Boer, I doubt that they would have had time to notify all the financial institutions they need to do in 3 days. So might that also slow them up in really comprehending the security breach? Just a thought. However, from my research, no other state has this particular notification requirement in statute. But let me be clear, and I think this is something that hasn't been clear, and I know it wasn't to me. There is already a requirement in statute to help protect the citizens of Michigan. Public Act 566 of 2006, which I actually think you may have been a sponsor on, Senator Knopf, that requires a business that has a security breach to do the following. I just saw your name. And it's to provide notice to residents without unreasonable delay with specific information, including the scope of the breach, what type of information was accessed, a phone number where individuals can obtain assistance, and information about remaining vigilant about identity theft. The statute also provides specific guidelines businesses must follow for the destruction of data containing personal identifying information. And for breaches that affect 1,001 or more residents of Michigan, the business or agency is required to notify all consumer reporting agencies of the breach. And you will note there's no prescribed time limit, only stated without reasonable delay. And this is fairly common across most of the states to notify our residents of the breaches. But 633 would put a mere 3-day notification window on businesses to contact financial institutions. Take a minute to think about how many different credit cards attached to different banks and credit unions there are. If this legislation was enacted, a business not only needs to contact each person affected, but they must also contact each bank. The cost implications for time and staffing are just astronomical, unless you have no customers, I guess. There would also be a specific cause of action that would allow financial institutions to sue businesses in the event that they were aware of a breach and did not notify within 3 days. And while there seems to be a liability shield if a good faith effort was made, if somebody decides to take a business to civil court, it will be up to that business to prove that they did it in good faith. And for many, especially small businesses, they can't afford an attorney and those costs that are associated with that to prove it. In addition, of course, there are criminal penalties that are already in statute for not following the individual notification, and then there would be additional criminal penalties and fines. Finally, there'd just be an egregious requirement for businesses that had a breach to provide all residents affected with ID theft prevention and monitoring services for a year. Shopping around and looking at several of these services, it looks like it costs about $150 per year per individual. I'll let you do the math for yourself if you start adding that up. And I believe that government would also be covered under this bill. So if there was a breach in in the state or local municipalities. And while we appreciate the attempt to mitigate the impact on small businesses by requiring businesses with 25 employees or less to merely contact their credit card processor, they are not exempt from the civil liabilities or the ID theft prevention provision. In regards to SB 632 and the Cybersecurity Council, it actually appears duplicative in light of PA 132 of 2017, which created the Cyber Civilian Core Act, operating out of DTMB. And while this group is meant to act in emergencies, it could easily be adjusted rather than creating another group of cybersecurity experts. It also appears that the appropriation omnibus bill last year specifically set aside funds for cybersecurity staffing, hardware, support costs, as well as requiring the department to identify specific outcomes and performance measures, including but not limited to the following: reduce the number of cyber threats, this is to the state, based on the daily attacks to prevent data breaches during the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2018. Reduce the risk of cyber vulnerabilities for application data and network during the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2018. And increase awareness of cyber threats and the preventative steps for citizens, businesses, and employees during the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2018. I would suggest that perhaps the legislature wait for the report and look at what preventative steps could be taken by business and work with the associations and companies in this room and beyond to make Michigan businesses aware of the tools the state is offering them to guard against these data incursions. In fact, I went and took a look at michigan.gov/cybersecurity, which I didn't even know we had or existed on the website. And there was a great deal of good information there that I will start passing on to my members. However, if people aren't aware, they can't make good use of the information. Finally, NFIB has been proud to work with this legislature to continue to make Michigan's business climate a place where job providers can flourish by slashing unnecessary and overly burdensome regulations. Unfortunately, Senate Bill 633 especially is the definition of a burdensome regulation. Again, I wish to thank the bill sponsor in this committee for their diligence in working to protect the citizens of our state. Unfortunately, we cannot support the bills before us, or likely any bill that focuses on financial institution notification and allows for a cause of action against our members. Thank you for your time and support of small business, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Amanda. Senator Knopf?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here this morning. Real quick, you don't agree with the 3 days, so is there a reasonable amount of time that should be required? In your mind, there shouldn't be any, or
No, and
is there a number that would suffice for your organization to be able to say it would be okay and reasonable?
No, and that's why I said at the end, I don't think any financial institution notification requirement would be okay with us. It would be overly burdensome, and honestly, we would be the only state in the country that has it, and we have never been excited when we're the first state in the country that has an onerous regulation on business, so.
Another question, if I can, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
In the civil liabilities, you say that we're giving you some protection in these bills for that, correct, or we are not?
Well, it says that if you notify within 3 days of being aware of the breach, but somebody could come along, a financial institution, or really in this case, a financial institution could say, well, we believe you knew about the breach sooner, and so we're going to bring a civil action. Now, I'm sure I know they don't want to. I know most financial institutions will not, but I have to protect my members for what may happen. And they could say, okay, we don't believe that, and then they have to go to court to prove it. And that costs money.
Is that the case today? Even if we didn't do this bill, that they could do that to you?
That would be for if they don't, notify individuals of a data breach. Right now, they're required to notify individual residents that have been affected. And again, the statute says in a timely manner. It does not indicate a timeframe.
So right now, there's no civil liabilities of financial institution thinking that you acted improperly to be able to take against you?
No, not to my knowledge. Now, they could still bring in action, but it wouldn't be written in statute to make it really easy for the court to rule in their favor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator McGregor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, I think everybody in this room would agree that identity theft and cybersecurity is a huge issue. And I know the last thing we want to do is to just shift liability. We got to come up with a solution here, a win-win solution. And I know you had just offered the NFIB to come up with a list of the tools that will help prevent that. And I look forward to not only you, but everybody else in this room to come up with solutions for this. Because right now, this is the solution in front of us. And if there's no other choices, we have to look out for your customers, our constituents. This is difficult when we're not playing well together, because I think the amount of experience that we have in this room right now, not here, but out there, it is awesome. And I know if we sat down in a room and came up with a win-win solution, it can happen. But to stiff arm the whole way, I'm not a fan of that. And I really think that I would like to see the NFIB and all the other individual groups come up with other options for us on this, because it's not only your customer, it's our constituents. These are the consumers. There's probably people in this room that have had data breaches. Whether you're for it or against these bills, we've all or know someone who's had a data breach. We need to fix this. And I'm not one who just wants to shift liability. I agree with you on that. But we got to be proactive on this, and just stiff arming this committee is not going to work in my eyes. So I appreciate you testifying.
Is it okay if I respond, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, ma'am.
And I don't disagree, but I again think a forced financial institution notification only ends up shifting liability. So again, in the my reading of the appropriations bill from last year, right now DTMB has actually been tasked and given money to come up with ideas, preventative ways, things like that. So right now the state is working on that. I also think that by putting things in statute, technology is moving so quickly that there's a little challenge with that. So we have to be careful if we are looking at other legislation, that it's not something that is going to be, obsolete in 10 years. But I also think that right now, the individual notification requirement that's in statute is actually pretty, that tells your customers, your constituents, that protects them. And frankly, then they actually have they have a cause of action against a business if the business doesn't let them know. So there is protection for citizens in Michigan right now. And there's just not necessarily protection as far as the financial institutions and their costs go. And I'd like to see, I think, we had somebody from the processors here last time we met. And I think at that level where they're running algorithms, when they're seeing all this stuff, is the better way to look at it than putting it on a business, whether it's a business of 5 people or a business of 50 people. Because again, they already have to do individual notification. And frankly, I looked at that and said, wow, why didn't we oppose that when that was out? Because that's a pretty harsh regulation on a business when you think about how many customers they have. So but we agreed that's necessary, but this isn't.
That point,
I
Senator?
just, and not every business stores data. And those aren't probably the ones that we're worried about. You know, the merchants that aren't storing any data, that's just going, those aren't where the problems are. It's those that are actually, I think, that are storing data are something that we need to sit down and come up with a good plan. So it's not hurting them, but it's also, you know, kind of a win-win for the business community, the financial institutions, and our consumers. And I'd be more than happy to work with the chair on
And-
this, exactly.
And I agree. My concern is, and this was brought up in the last hearing, that you do have a small business and maybe they've keyed things into PayPal and they don't realize they have malware on their computer. And so now they're liable. And honestly, a lot of them might not have any idea what to do and how to move forward. And that's where the state can actually, you know, we're not big like, hey, let's have the state do this. But this is something where the state can be helpful in providing information. But I agree, something has to be done, but it's not this, in our opinion.
Okay, to the point, Senator O'Brien.
Yes, thank you for bringing up the point about notification when there's been a data breach. My husband's and my data has been breached several times, and we've never been notified by any entity under Michigan law. We have been notified once by Delta Airlines, which would be under federal law, about a possible data breach. So how certain are we that businesses are aware that their own data is being breached? I mean, we saw last week in committee where we had a Wendy's where lending institutions had to literally cut off any Wendy's spending, which doesn't help a local business owner. But their data had been breached, it had not been addressed. And so I'm just very concerned that within the last year, my husband's and my data has been breached, our credit card or our debit cards the information has been taken, and we've never been notified except by our lending institution or discovering it on our own that it was breached.
Well, and again, was it due to a security breach, or was it due to somebody who's stealing credit cards, which is a little different from a business that was perhaps negligent with encryption or things like that, or had a breach in that business, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to create this algorithm and go on the dark web and then steal your information and then charge random things. So, I mean, they're two different things, right? And
But I think it's a little bit unfair. I understand the point you're making, but you said that citizens already have, they already have security and they already have recourse. And I'm just saying, it's not as rosy as what it seems out there. I'm not here to punish small business. I've owned a small business. But if our data continues to be breached as individuals, that will drive up business costs. It is going to cause a decline in the trust that a customer is going to have with a business. There's got to be a way to find a win-win rather than just saying, let's just wait, we're not going to do anything. Because I got to tell you, at least, well, twice where I've had to get new debit cards, my husband and I, just in this year alone, plus being notified by Delta that my data was breached. Who knows, it could have been my passport as well. All of that's in their system. Everything being breached. It seems like getting these notices are becoming very common, and you sit here and there's nothing. Hey, I'm supposed to just keep watching my account, keep watching Social Security, whatever is breached. It's all pretty vague. And, you know, I think that the bill sponsor is just trying to find a way to help deal with this issue. And if there's a way, like Senator McGregor said, for all of us to come together, because my constituents aren't saying just sit and wait. And again, I've been very pro small business. I want to support my small businesses. But when my debit card was stolen, that was small business. I only use it locally. I don't use it online. I don't use it out of town. And it's a lot of our debit cards are being stolen, which we primarily only use in town at small businesses. There's got to be a way for all of us to improve this situation together.
no, and I agree, Senator, but I don't understand how this bill helps that. This bill helps the financial institutions not incur costs. It does not help the individual whose bank card has been stolen, identity who has been stolen. It helps, and I appreciate that the financial institutions are bearing a cost to that. But this bill does nothing to do that, because as of right now, you said yourself, a lot of businesses aren't even aware they've been breached. they're actually going to be the ones to find out from their financial institutions or their credit card processors for the most part, unless they're a large corporation. And let's face it.
So then if you have more ideas, if you can share that with the bill sponsor, because I think it sounds like we're all trying to get to the same place, but to me, doing nothing is not a map to get there. So if we can figure out a way to try to get there, I found the bill sponsor to be a fairly reasonable man, and I have no bills in front of the committee, so
No.
I'm not sucking up. At least I don't think I have any in front of the committee right now. But I mean, if we can find a way to get there, because this is real, and I don't want us to wait until it hits really big and we start seeing lending institutions asserting the rights that they're currently allowed to. They are willingly waiving fees and eating the cost, which is not just banks. These are credit unions. They're spreading the cost amongst fees, whether it's minimum amount in your account or it's a limited number of transactions. One of my lending institutions has now inserted that. The cost is being spread and it's coming back to me. So my data's been stolen. My bank is eating the cost by then putting more fees back onto me. We're all eating the cost. So how can we get there together and reduce all of our costs together? Thank you.
Yeah.
And I agree, the bill sponsor is very open. The problem is we were working within the constructs of 633, and I just cannot be on board with any of that. So
Thank you, Amanda. Just Senator Hertel.
Oh,
Thank you, Amanda. I think you did make some good arguments, and so I just want to, I don't always say that to you. But I do want to just, I do want to tickle one a little bit. So I actually understand one of the things you said, that the idea that every institution, I understood lots of it, but at this point, one of the points you made was about the institutions, small business being treated differently than large business, and that all the different financial institutions, and if you have a lot of customers, that could be difficult, and I get that. So would you be opposed to them being told they have to tell the processor if they're aware of a breach?
I think that's something we did discuss at one point. I can't just do, because right now the bill actually says a small business of 25 employees or less just has to notify their processor. I think that, again, small business, the definition of small business normally tends to actually be 50 and under, but I have members more than that.
Yeah.
I think actually notifying the processor, and I don't know how the processors feel about this, probably makes more sense, because a business is gonna actually have to go to their processor to get all of the information anyway. So I think there could be something there. Again, I don't like the 3 days, even if we went to the processors, and I don't like the cause of action.
Is there a period of time that you think would be reasonable? I mean, we're talking about somebody actually having knowledge at this point. So, I mean, there aren't that many processors. So it's not like the same kind of length of time argument that you had with the different institutions. So I'm just trying to figure out what would delay you 3 days or even more than that once you knew, telling the processors, because that seems like a fairly easy step.
I would have to talk to perhaps some processors too. I would want to know, because then I assume perhaps then you're going to put something on them, and I don't want a domino effect of now the processors are all angry with me. I can't see their faces behind me.
I don't know. I don't know if any of them are here, but I'm just saying, it seems like.
I think that would make more sense in concept. I don't want to agree to anything here.
I understand.
Again, I think you have to get rid of the cause of action. We can't support a cause of action in any bill, because again, just one lawsuit against a small business could destroy that small business, because even if they are right to prove it, it could cost too much. But I agree, Senator Hertel, that probably is a more palatable option from our perspective.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And Amanda, thank you. Does our small business people really think our personal financial data is protected well enough? I mean, you tell me, you think it's protected well enough?
No, I honestly, Senator, don't think any of our information is probably protected enough, because There are people that are constantly trying to figure out how to. But I don't know that we will ever, as long as we continue to have information online.
So Amanda, you're saying our small business are saying that these bills won't go anywhere, we won't support them, but we don't think our personal data or financial data is protected well enough?
I think they're saying these bills are not the answer to protect our financial data.
Okay, well, that may be. So you're not willing, I mean, the small businesses, I know all my credit unions are small business. You're talking about my wife's business. You're talking about the ones that I was breached at the Westco in my hometown twice. And we should do nothing? Just sit back and wait?
I'm not saying we should do nothing. I'm
Okay,
saying we
tell
should
me
not
what
do
we should
these
do.
bills.
Well,
Senator Hertel, again, this is crazy. I agree with Senator Hertel to a certain extent. I mean, I feel like the world's spinning out of control.
all right.
But I think there are things that can be done, but within the
Yeah.
construct, and listen, and I worked in good faith, and I want to give the folks from the Bankers Association, the credit union, we really worked and tried to get there. We all wanted to get there. But in the end, this just isn't the vehicle that we can support.
Okay, so you did work with them.
Yes, yes. I spent far more time with the Dave Worthams than probably was healthy
With
on it.
Dave. Oh,
So, no, I'm joking, Dave's great. No, but we did work.
all right. Well, Amanda,
Dave.
whoa,
No.
we're going further than I
No,
wanted
no,
to go
no,
here
no,
today.
but we really did. We really tried to get there because we wanted, I think the business community will tell you, we wanted to get there because we don't want to be here. We don't want to have to be doing this. This isn't fun for us, so.
Well, it's not fun for your 10 million people in the state of Michigan or those that
No.
have cards either.
And
So,
listen,
yeah.
I've been breached too. I actually had
Yeah.
a fraudulent UI claim against me. So somebody filed for UI in my name. So I understand. So I'm dealing with that. I'm having to watch my credit reports and everything. But again, we need to find the right solution, and this just isn't that, in our
Okay,
opinion.
so if we have another work group, when we get all done the hearings here, and to bring together everybody, as Senator McGregor talks about, and coming up with, you're not at the table with these bills because you cannot support them.
I
Is
can't-
that right?
I cannot support these bills. That doesn't mean I can't support something.
Well, these are the bills that would have to be made the changes to. These are the bills that would have to have the changes made
Well,
to.
I mean, it could be obviously 633, but as it's written with businesses having to make
Yeah.
financial notification,
that
financial
clear.
institution notification and a cause of action, we cannot support that.
Okay,
But there's a lot we could support, but not those two things.
Okay, so it's those two things.
Those are two.
So you would come to the table, discuss the changes we're talking within 633.
I would delight to come to the table with you,
Perfect.
but only if
There.
Senator
All right.
McGregor comes as well.
Thank you, well, we
And
got it.
Senator
Good
Hertel.
enough. All right, we'll have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.